5 minutes.
Well, okay, fine. It's curious because you've sat here all day, and thank you so much for showing up, because this was something that you wanted to do. The Republicans wanted to make sure that you were hid in a room with no cameras, because I was there. They didn't really want you out public because they were afraid of what you would say, which is that you could have proven your case because you are a career prosecutor who knows how to prosecute criminals. So just to be clear, today, it seems like the Republicans have not really fought very much about whether or not Trump was guilty or not. In fact, their fight seems to be over whether or not you were authorized to prove their guilt. Do you recall a number of Republican members asking about whether or not your appointment was okay, even though we know that you've testified about the more than 100-year precedent that allowed for your appointment?
Rep. Jasmine Crockett argues that Donald Trump's presidential run was never about public service, but about self-preservation. She opens by pointing out that the witness Republicans brought in was deliberately kept out of the public eye. According to her, GOP members didn't want cameras around because they knew this was a career prosecutor who could clearly explain how criminals are charged and convicted, and that scared them. Crockett notes that throughout the hearing, Republicans didn't really argue that Trump was innocent. Instead, they focused on attacking whether the prosecutor had the authority to bring charges at all. She reminds the room that the appointment followed long-standing legal precedent, supported by more than a century of law and even Supreme Court rulings. The witness confirms that their office relied on strong legal backing when making that appointment. She then lays out what she sees as the bigger picture. A man facing nearly 90 criminal allegations across 4 jurisdictions, who was later convicted on 34 felony counts by a jury, should surprise no one when accused of committing crimes related to January 6th. In her view, the pattern was already there. Crockett lists what she describes as Trump's ongoing behavior: violating due process, ignoring court orders, launching military actions without congressional approval, enriching himself by more than $1.4 billion, pressuring elected officials to manipulate voting maps to stay in power, and demanding money from TV networks. Given all that, she asks why anyone would pretend that January 6th was somehow out of character. She then delivers her central claim. The real reason Trump ran for president again, she says, was to avoid prosecution. She believes that without the presidency, the evidence would have put him behind bars for life. She backs this up by citing the special counsel's report, which states that the Constitution blocks the prosecution of a sitting president, regardless of how serious the crimes are. The report explicitly concludes that if Trump had not been elected and were not returning to office, prosecutors believed they had enough admissible evidence to win a conviction at trial. To Crockett, that makes it clear: Trump ran so he wouldn't go to prison. She criticizes the committee chairman and other Republicans for spending the entire day attacking the prosecutor and trying to rewrite the events of January 6th. She points out that Chairman Jim Jordan failed to mention how frightened he was during the attack. According to testimony, Mark Meadows said he had never seen Jordan that scared. She also highlights that Jordan was in direct contact with the White House before and during January 6th, which is why his phone records were subpoenaed. She dismisses claims that the investigation targeted Republicans simply for being Republicans, calling those accusations baseless conspiracy theories. When asked directly whether phone records were subpoenaed because of party affiliation, the witness responds clearly, no. They were subpoenaed because they were relevant to the investigation. Then she turns to basic facts. Donald Trump lost the 2020 election to Joe Biden. 60 federal and state courts found no evidence of widespread voter fraud. Trump's own attorney general and vice president knew he lost, yet he still pressured state officials, organized fake elector schemes, pushed Mike Pence to overturn the results, and told his supporters to fight like hell. She reminds everyone that Trump knew his actions would lead to violence at the Capitol. The report details how some of his closest advisors openly argued that violence was necessary, including John Eastman, who tried to convince Pence to break the law. Crockett concludes by saying responsibility doesn't stop with Trump. Multiple law enforcement officers died, thousands were injured, and 147 Republicans voted to overturn the election results, including members still serving on the committee. Then she yields the floor.